Just in time for Halloween, welcome to episode lucky number 13 of WooWoo for the Skeptic. I'm Kim Pullender, your host and curiosity advocate for the world of metaphysics. Today we'll be focusing on my former arch nemesis, emotions. My interview guest is the founder of a healing modality called the Emotion Code. Do you have trapped emotions in your energy field? Do you have old emotions trapped in your physical body? And to go a step further, is it possible you inherited stuck emotions from your mother or father? Stay tuned for these topics and more on today's show. Feelings. Such an inconvenient word to many left-brained IT engineer types, so I've heard. It can be intimidating and confusing to navigate our feelings, let alone get away from them like some often try to do. My guest today claims that there are some feelings we actually haven't gotten away from, and they're stuck in our energy field as well as our bodies. I was very curious about the emotion code when I first heard about it. Naturally, I needed to dive right in and play around with it myself. And over the years, in my experience, I've found that the emotion code is relevant to any issue you have in life, period. It's not that it's the be-all, end-all answer to those issues, but rather trapped emotions can contribute to prolonging the issues long after the originating event. For example, I've cleared stuck emotions for everything ranging from my abandonment issues from my birth mother to more innocuous issues such as grinding my teeth at night. And for me, in my experience, the emotion code has been consistently powerful and reliable in its contribution to the healing of past wounds. To hear more about this modality, please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Nelson. I am honored to be welcoming my guest today, Dr. Bradley Nelson. Dr. Brad was born and raised in Great Falls, Montana. He began his career in computer programming, but decided instead to attend chiropractic school. Since going into practice, Dr. Brad has become one of the world's foremost experts in not only the physical health of the body, but also the emotional and energetic side of healing. He has developed a simple yet powerful self-help method called the Emotion Code, which is also the title of his book he wrote in 2004. And for me, there are a couple of modalities that have been life-changing, and the Emotion Code is definitely one of them. And it's one of the two primary energy modalities I use in my practice with clients. So Dr. Brad, thank you so much for being here and talking to me, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Kim. It's really great to be on your show with you, and I'm excited to talk.
All right. Yeah, well, I was very moved when I read that you were diagnosed with kidney disease at age 13 and actually sent home with a 50-50 chance of survival. My mom had a similar experience with kidney failure in her 20s. But now in your case, your parents took you to a pair of osteopaths. So how do you think this shaped your future path into energy work?
Well, it was huge, really, because I was really sick. And I was getting these terrific pains in the back that would come totally out of the blue, that would sometimes literally just put me on the ground. And my parents were very worried, didn't know what to do, and took me to the hospital, and they ran these tests, and there was really nothing medical science had to offer me. And I was either going to survive or I wasn't. And so my parents, since Western medicine had nothing available, what my parents did is they took me to see some old-time osteopathic doctors who practiced out on the edge of town in a muddy field in a trailer house. These people, though, were really healers. They were holistic healers back then, and it was a long time ago. But yet, what I noticed was that not only did they have literally bus loads, buses full of people would arrive from different states to be worked on by these healers. And that was one thing I noticed. But the other thing that I noticed was that within just a few weeks, the pains that I had pretty much disappeared. Pretty soon, I forgot that I'd ever been sick, and my folks took me back to the hospital, and they ran all the tests on me. And as I recall, they ran the tests twice, and they said, "Well, it's a spontaneous remission. Whatever we did must have worked." And of course, I knew they hadn't done anything, and I knew in my heart that what these people had done for my body was exactly what my body needed and wanted. And so I decided that's what I wanted to do with my life, is I wanted to be a healer. And if I needed to practice out on the edge of town in a trailer house in a muddy field, that was okay. I didn't care. I was 13. But I still remember the jarring contrast that I observed at that young age between where all the money was, the big medical clinic with all the money and all the wealth, and they couldn't help me. And these people on the outside, on the edge of town in a trailer house, they fixed me. And so that taught me a profound lesson. And I remember lying on their table as they were working on my body. And I remember saying, I want to do this when I grow up. I want to do what you do. And they would tell me, no, no, no. If you go to chiropractic school or naturopathic school or something, you'll come out a zombie. They'll fill your head so full of old ideas and antiquated notions of doing things, and that you won't be able to think for yourself. So when eventually I did go to school, chiropractic school, I was very, very much on guard as far as being open. I was very, very open. I'd stayed open to any new ideas. And no matter what anybody said, no matter what my instructors said or touted as being the best way to do a certain thing, my attitude was always, well, maybe, but maybe there's a better way. It was really an answer to prayer that I went into the healing arts. And so when I got into practice, I got in the habit of asking for help with each person that I saw, and it was a totally private, personal thing. Nobody ever knew that I was doing that, but I've come to believe and to know that the highest duty of the healer really is to act as a go-between for that higher power, whatever you believe that higher power to be. And at best, as a healer, we are instruments in God's hands to help that person that is coming to us for help. And there were times I had that habit for many, many years. I practiced in a brick and mortar practice for 17 years and then 2 years in a remote practice. And that was my habit. Everybody that I saw, I had this habit. But I have to tell you, Kim, during the last 10 years that I was in my brick and mortar practice, I was primarily seeing people that had been told there was no cure for them. There was no help for them at all, in Western medicine anyway. And there were times when working, especially with those people, where if I came up against a roadblock and I didn't know what to do or I didn't know how to approach something, when I would offer that silent prayer for help, there were times when the information would just literally flood into my mind from up above about what to do for that person and how to look at this and how to conceive and conceptualize this. And sometimes it was a totally different way of looking at things than what I'd ever even considered before. It was an amazing thing. And as time went on, the patients that I saw just seemed to be more and more difficult as far as the cases went. But I was able to get the vast, vast majority of those people well. And it really has to do with the subconscious mind. And I'll tell you what I believe, because if you understand how I look at this, then it really makes sense. I had an experience once where I was sitting meditating. I was 18 years old. I was just sitting there meditating. And all of a sudden, I had this experience where if you've ever been homesick in your life and you think about what that feels like, sitting there meditating, all of a sudden, I was filled with a feeling of homesickness that was absolutely off the scale. If you take the most homesick moment you've ever felt in your life and you magnify it maybe 1 billion times or something, it might come close. I don't know. It was completely off the chart. And it lasted for about 3 seconds. Every particle of my being was instantaneously filled with this absolutely overwhelming feeling of homesickness to be back in the home that I used to live in before I came to this world. It only lasted for a few seconds, but it just left me reeling with awe. I mean, it was an incredible thing. And I realized that from that experience that we really are strangers here and that we came from another place where we lived with God. And if we didn't have the forgetfulness that we all experience when we come into this world, honestly, I believe we wouldn't be able to stand it here for 5 minutes. This place that we are in now, it's a necessary experience for us, but it's a far, far cry from where we once were.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective on the homesickness because I've had a very similar experience of that intense homesick feeling and feeling confused by it. And yeah, I like that perspective of we do need to forget where we came from in order to make it down here.
Well, right. I look at it as a test. We're here and our memory from our life before is totally blocked. Why? So that we can actually have a good test. It's a real test. It's a test of each of us, I believe, to determine what we're going to choose. We're free to choose. We can choose light, we can choose dark, we can choose good, we can choose evil. That's up to us. We get to choose. But if we could remember our life before, our life with God, it wouldn't be a fair test. So anyway,
Do you mind if I ask you what your religious background is? Like, are you Mormon or?
yeah.
Okay. I like the fact that you said that your belief is it doesn't matter where the higher power is. And that's what I've found with different energy healing modalities is that we all seem to be meeting at the same place. Some people might have issues with the label like God or source or universe or whatnot. But in your perspective, you believe that it's all the same intelligence, so to speak?
Well, yeah, I had a profound spiritual experience when I was 15 years old. And I learned in that experience that God is real, that we have a Father in heaven who cares for us, who loves us all. And you can refer, and everybody refers to God depending on their own experiences as, God goes by different names for different people. You can refer to God as source energy or higher power or universal intelligence. It doesn't really matter, I don't think, what you refer to that higher power as. But I think that a key element, a very important thing for us in this world is to try to be connected and try to be aligned with that higher power, with God, whatever you want to refer to that higher power as. If we're not in alignment with that higher power, then what happens is we're not as happy and we tend to create more trapped emotions and we tend to live a life that is diminished in many ways. And so connecting is a very, very important thing. And the fun thing about being a healer, and really the great thing about the emotion code and the other work that we teach, is that what we're really doing is we're helping people to become healers. We all have that ability to heal. And the beauty of the emotion code and the body code is that we're really giving people back that power. And there's nothing more fun, really, than healing somebody and helping somebody in a natural way. And you sleep really well at night if that's what you're doing a lot of, especially if that's what you're doing for a living. And we're helping people now all over the world to do that as a way to make income. You sleep really well at night because you're making a difference in the world.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the emotion code when I read the book is you have made it so accessible just to anyone who reads that book. If you read the book, you can go out and do it. And I know you have certifications and training for people who want to be practitioners in it, but I just really appreciated how accessible it was to pick it up.
Well, absolutely. And I have to tell you something, Kim, during the time that I was writing the book, it was really a matter of prayer. As I was working on the book, I would pray before I would write the book. And I would plead with God to help me to make these concepts simple for anybody to understand. Because, I wasn't trying to write a book about that was coming from my own ego. And I think a lot of books, unfortunately, end up coming from the ego of the writer. And the idea there is that, look how smart I am. You've got to be a rocket scientist to be able to do this. And unfortunately, the ego gets in the way of so many things. And I didn't want to have my ego in this at all. I have to tell you a story. I was talking recently with a woman who told me that she went to emotioncodegift.com. And by the way, your listeners can go there too. And they can download the book for free. And they can download the audio for free. That's at Emotion Code Gift. So it's a $67 value, free gift for your listeners. And anyway, we've had that up for a little while. And this woman went there and she downloaded the book on audio. And she started listening to the book and reading the book. And her son started reading the book and listening to the book also. And he started practicing with his friends. And she didn't pay too much attention. But a couple of weeks later, the phone rang. And the woman on the other end of the phone line identified herself as the mother of one of her son's friends. And she said, listen, she said, your son has been doing this emotion thing. She said, I thought it was kind of cute. I didn't pay much attention. But she said, I have to tell you, something really dramatic has happened. She said, my son has had a severe phobia of water all of his life. And we have tried everything to fix it. We've taken him to many different people, different doctors and psychiatrists, and we've tried everything. Nothing has ever worked. And we gave up a while ago, assuming that this was just going to be something that he was going to have his entire life. But she said, right now, I'm at the community pool. And she said, my son is in the pool swimming with the other boys and playing in the water. She said, he's never been able to do this in his entire life. This is just astonishing to me. She said, your son did this to him. She said, what in the world is he doing? How is this even possible? And those two boys are only 11 years old. That's how simple it is.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what initiative for an 11-year-old boy to do this for his friends. I mean, that's amazing.
Well, the youngest child that we know of that's using the emotion code successfully is actually 5 years old. Think about that.
Wow.
It's so easy, really. And I love it that kids are learning it because they don't have to grow up with all the emotional baggage that the rest of us did.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk a little bit about, for any listener who isn't familiar with it, about what it is. So how would you describe it?
Well, if you think about who we are as human beings, and if you look at what the quantum physicists have been telling us for over 100 years, and that is that the human body ultimately is made of energy. You know, you look at your hand and it looks solid, but if you magnify your hand a million times, you're looking face to face with a single individual atom. And if you look inside that atom, there's really nothing in there but empty space and these little infinitesimally tiny energies that are zipping around at the speed of light. So that's really what we are. We're beings of pure energy. And the body itself is almost like a force field. It's an amazing thing. But when we're feeling an intense emotion, on a quantum level, what's going on is that our body is taking on a new vibration, a new frequency. It seems that every emotion has its own specific frequency. Anger is a different frequency than sadness, and betrayal is a different frequency than grief, and so on. They're all different. But when you are feeling an intense emotion, somehow, in some way that we don't really quite understand yet, some of that emotional energy can become trapped in the body. So that when that event is over, when the bully moves away, or the divorce is finalized, or you quit that job, or whatever it may be, you move on with your life, and yet your body can still be holding some of that emotional energy that you experienced before. And the first time that I saw this actually was a woman who came into my office who thought she was having a heart attack. And she had crushing chest pain and difficulty breathing, and the left side of her face was completely numb, and her left arm was completely numb. This looks like a heart attack, right? And I told my staff, we might need an ambulance, just stand by for a minute. And I started doing some testing on her. Now, with the emotion code, what we do is we teach people how to tap into that intelligence that is within us, the intelligence that runs our body, that keeps our bodies working, and that's really the subconscious mind. And we teach you how to get information out of the subconscious mind using some simple forms of muscle testing. So I was doing some muscle testing with her, asking questions. And what I found was there was a reason, an emotional reason for what she was experiencing, for these heart attack symptoms, really. And the emotion was grief. And I tested to see when this had occurred, and it had occurred 3 years earlier. And when I arrived at that, she broke down. She burst into tears. And she said, I can't believe that's affecting me. I thought I dealt with all that. And I said, well, what in the world happened to you? And she said 3 years before, her husband had an affair. And it destroyed her marriage. And it destroyed her life for a while. She thought she was going to be married to this guy forever. And she ended up spending about a year in therapy. She got divorced from him, and she had recently gotten remarried. And she was happy in her new relationship. And as far as she was concerned, that ex-husband was ancient history. However, her physical body was holding that emotion of grief, and it was so powerful, it was actually simulating a heart attack. I mean, she could have gone right to emergency. They would have admitted her, no question about it. And I released that trapped emotion. And the feeling came back into her arm and into her face within about 3 seconds. Whoosh. And the chest pain was gone. The difficulty breathing was gone. And she left the office 10 minutes later feeling completely fine and very relieved. And I remember after she left, I sat down at my desk and I was just absolutely I was just blown away. Wait a minute, did I just see that? What in the world just happened? And you see, now we know that people die from a broken heart all the time. And, it's called cardiac syndrome and so on. And it's a fascinating thing. And I think that in her case, we're still in touch, by the way. And that was about 20 some years ago, 25, 28 years ago.
Was that your first experience then with a stuck emotion? You just intuitively knew to check for that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was just learning about emotional baggage and yeah, absolutely. And so she's still alive and we're still in touch. But honestly, I think that she would not have lived this long. I think that she would have been one of those people. She would have died of a heart attack. And the real reason would have been her husband's affair, and nobody would have put those together. If you think about the emotional events that you've been through, think about the times that you cried yourself to sleep at night, or the times where you felt like your heart was going to break. And the emotional baggage that we have eventually manifests as pain or as disease or as depression or anxiety or phobias or panic attacks or PTSD or eating disorders or an inability to find love. You're stuck being alone for the rest of your life. Or it can even manifest financially, because oftentimes people can't seem to get ahead financially. They've got a checking account that just seems to have holes in it. And all of these things are manifestations of what's going on inside of us, what's going on within us. And the easiest way to clean that up is to actually just get rid of that emotional baggage that you have been carrying around. And the fascinating thing about this, Kim, that we've discovered is that a lot of us are carrying baggage that's not really even our own. We're carrying emotional luggage, if you will, that we got at the moment of conception from mom or dad, that they got from their mom or dad, that they got from their mom or dad. Sometimes it goes back generations. And we now know, using the emotion code, it's easy to find that kind of baggage and release it as well. The amazing thing about that is that when you clear inherited emotional baggage from yourself or from someone you love, you're also clearing it from whoever they got it from. It's an amazing thing. I asked my daughter, and by the way, one of the beautiful things about the emotion code is that it can be done at a distance. And so you don't have to actually be there, because it's energy medicine at its simplest and most pure. And the beautiful thing about energy medicine is that it can be done at any distance. There's no barrier of distance at all.
Yeah, and I've asked various guests on their perspectives or how to explain why energy works at a distance. What's your explanation for that?
Well, we're all connected for one thing. I mean, if you stand on the beach and you're looking out at the ocean and you see some islands out there, they might look totally separated. But if you were to drain the water out of the ocean, you see they're all connected. We're all connected energetically as well. I don't really profess to totally understand. I don't think anybody really understands all of it and how it all works. But I've worked with people at a distance for many years. And the funny thing about it was that when I was in my practice, I had a brick and mortar practice, and people would come to see me at my physical location. But when they would go away and they'd go on vacation or something, sometimes they would call me because they'd have a problem. And I found that I could work on them at a distance. And it wasn't something that I ever learned from anyone. It was just something that I just kind of automatically knew how to do it. And now that's in the emotion code. And it's a very concrete, really simple thing. But yeah, exactly how it works, I don't know. But I can tell you it absolutely works. And in fact, I do webinars every week where we work with people that are in pain or that are having relationship or abundance issues or whatever it might be. And we work on them at a distance. And it's actually a really simple thing. And it works really, really well.
I loved in your book how you had an emotions chart, and when you talk about the muscle testing. So I can imagine it might sound overwhelming to a listener who thinks, oh, look at all my childhood trauma and I must have all these stuck emotions. Where do I begin? And your chart really helps you pinpoint what emotion you're working with for which problem with, using muscle testing. So I'm curious, how did you come up with the emotions in that chart?
Well, there's nothing new under the sun. And basically, it goes back to the ancient acupuncturists who were very observant, and they came up with the ideas that different organs in the body actually produce different emotions. And then somewhere a couple of thousand years ago, that idea sort of fell out of favor. If you ask someone, for example, who does acupuncture now, the prevailing belief in Eastern medicine is that the emotions that we experience really all emanate from the heart. But in studying this, I have found that I really believe that it's true, that the emotions emanate from the different organs in the body. And that sounds strange, but in Western medicine, we're so stuck in our heads, and we believe that everything that goes on in our lives it's all coming from the brain. But the brain is just the hardware. The heart itself, of course, we know now is another brain, and it's really the most important of the brains that we have.
Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your perspective on pulling too many emotions at one time. And I know that for myself, so when I first started playing with it, I first did it on myself before I did it on others. And I thought, oh, well, I have a heart wall that's made up of all these stuck emotions. I'm just going to pull them all. And it was a little bit traumatic. In the end, I had to put up a portion of my heart wall back in place in order to feel like I was in a good place again. And I've heard this from friends who have gone to practitioners. I don't know if they're certified or not, but just practitioners who use the code. And they walk in the office and the person says, oh, you have a heart wall. I'm just going to take it down. And they proceed to take it down, and it puts the person into a tailspin. So what is your perspective on how many you should remove at one time? Are there things you should do to make sure that you don't get into a tailspin?
First of all, the most important thing that we teach people in doing this work is before you start working on someone, even before you start working on yourself, if you're working alone, the most important thing is to take a moment and ask for some help from up above. And then it's important to realize that the body typically will release about 8 to 10 emotions, sometimes less, sometimes a few more. But it's usually not a good idea to release many more than that in one session, because the body has to process all of those. Sometimes the subconscious mind gets overeager and will want to release more, but then the processing from that can sometimes be, it can sometimes be a little bit difficult. And so we always ask, if you're doing it the right way, the other thing that we do is we always ask, especially if you're working on the heart wall, one of the questions in the flow chart is, can we release a trapped emotion from your heart wall now? If you're doing it the right way, the subconscious mind will, at a certain point, will just say, well, no, sorry, I need to process what's been done so far. So, it's possible that you can force the issue and remove too much, but that's the guideline that we teach people is you're pretty safe to release 8 or 10 trapped emotions in a single session. But then it's a good idea to let the body recover a little bit. It's like anything else. I mean, for example, if you're having any kind of work done, okay. For example, if you're having massage, maybe you've never gotten a massage in your life, and if you go to somebody and you get a really deep tissue massage, you're going to be really sore for a few days because your body's not used to it. So it's a similar kind of thing. Most of us are in a hurry, right? We're so conditioned to think that, okay, I want an immediate fix for this issue that's taken me 30 years to develop. I remember once I had a patient that came to me who had migraine headaches for 19 years. And I did one treatment with her, and she came back the next time and she was still having her migraines, and she was kind of mad about it. And I said, well, hold on. I said, do you think maybe it might take, you had these for 19 years. Is it possible that it might take us 19 weeks maybe for these to totally go away? Is that possible? And she said, oh, well, yeah, maybe. I mean, people just aren't used to thinking of things in that way. It's a healing process, and you can't rush the healing process. If you try to rush the healing process, that's when you run into, having side effects from rushing it. And there's no reason to rush it. Just slow down.
Yeah, and I really like your guidance on that about testing to see if you should release another one, because that's what I do now is I always test, is it in my highest good to release another emotion or not? And yeah, everything's good now.
Yeah, the subconscious mind knows. I mean, and that's the most amazing and most beautiful thing about the work that we do, both the body code and the emotion code, we rely completely on the subconscious mind, which has a perfect understanding of exactly what's wrong with you. If you've been diagnosed with some kind of a disease, if you're dealing with back pain or infertility or asthma or digestive disorders or depression or any of those things, your subconscious mind knows with a perfect understanding. Why? All of those things are just symptoms, and we manifest symptoms because of the imbalances that we have going on internally. And so if we can fix those imbalances, and how do we find those? By asking the subconscious mind. And the reason why I wrote the emotion code book was first, before I released the body code, which is the more comprehensive way of looking at the entire body and finding anything that's wrong, is because the number one most common kind of imbalance that we all suffer from is actually our trapped emotions, our emotional baggage. So,
okay, so I'd love to hear more about the body code. Is that's kind of the next level, the next step after the emotion code?
well, right. What happened was during all those years that I was in practice, seeing all kinds of people of all ages with all kinds of conditions, I was constantly praying and asking for help to know what I needed to do for people. And what I found was that people's symptoms were really resulting from imbalances that were occurring in the body. Now, of course, the most common kind of imbalance is trapped emotions, but there are other kinds of imbalances. There are things, for example, like pathogens, and those are little infections that can get into the body and can cause trouble. There are things like toxicity. Toxins get into the body, and they can cause issues for us. Maybe it's from your vaccinations, or maybe from the food that you've been eating, or your metal fillings in your teeth, and so on. Another kind of imbalance has to do with the structural alignment of everything in the body. Is everything lined up? Are your bones lined up? Are your tissues in correct alignment? If not, you're not going to be as healthy as you could be. And then a couple of other categories of imbalances. One of those has to do, of course, with nutrition and lifestyle. Another one has to do with our emotional baggage. And then another one has to do with the balance of the systems in the body, the acupuncture systems, and so on. So what I did as a former computer programmer, I put together this system that I called the body code. And it enabled me to very rapidly tap into the subconscious mind. If you can imagine, think about this. If you've got a newer car, when you take it into a mechanic, what does he do? He plugs in a computer, and the computer talks to the engine and finds out what's going on. Well, that's kind of what the body code is. It's an interface, really, for the subconscious mind. It's a way for us to get information out of the subconscious mind in a very rapid, very simple way to find out what's really going on. If you've got a virus in the body, if you've got a parasite in your body, your subconscious mind knows it. If you've got a deficiency of vitamin B or vitamin C or some mineral, your subconscious mind understands it perfectly. See, consciously we know very, very little. All we know consciously is that we don't feel good, our life's not working, but the subconscious mind knows all of those underlying reasons. So that's really what the body code is. It's just a way to identify these different kinds of imbalances. And
so then once you find an imbalance, like let's say toxicity, how do you proceed to alleviate it?
well, the body code actually has that information built into it. It will show you what to do. You're simply asking questions, and the subconscious mind will take you there. So there are ways to help remove toxins energetically from the body, but then we also give various methods of actually cleansing and detoxing and so on. And we have charts in there that look like the emotion code chart, but they might be a chart of herbs, or maybe they're a chart of nutrients, or maybe foods and so on.
Oh, I see. So it's kind of like a flow chart for the body systems.
Yeah, it's a really simple, really powerful way to open the subconscious mind and read it like a book and figure out what's really going on. Now, think about this. This system came about in this practice of mine where, if you can imagine, I was seeing people, a new person every 10 minutes. My sessions lasted 10 minutes, and I had a room full of people. Imagine having a waiting room full of people that have been told they're incurable. There's no hope for them at all. And you got 10 minutes per person. Well, this system developed in that kind of an environment where I didn't have any time to waste. I had to cut right to the chase and figure out what was really going on with people. And I was able to do that using this system called the body code. And I'll tell you what happened, Kim. This system worked so well for me. I taught bits and pieces of it in different parts of the world, but never really taught the whole thing. And I had this sort of a vague idea that eventually I would put it into some kind of a package. And I thought, this is so powerful. This is just for doctors. And then in 2008, about a year after the Emotion Code book was published, I woke up one morning to find my mind full of instruction. And this is a very interesting thing, but I woke up and I was being told, you need to take everything that you know about natural healing and put it into a self-study course that anyone can learn and make it available to everyone, everywhere. And that was it, verbatim, word for word. That was the instruction that came to me. And I remember thinking, are you sure about this? And then I sat on this for about 3 months because I thought, I don't even know if I want to start this. This is going to be so much work. I knew I had to do it. And so finally I got working on it, and it took a year. And so in 2009, we introduced Body Code, the Body Code 1.0. And then in 2013, we took another year, completely revamped it, and that's what we now have as Body Code 2.0. So there's a site people can go to. You can go to bodycodehealing.com and you can look at this. But that's what this is. It's a self-study course. It's the most advanced of its kind in the world. And in fact, we have it's also an app. It's an app that runs on your phone or your iPad. And we recently got a patent from the U.S. Patent Office on this because it's so powerful, and there's really nothing else. There's never really been anything else like it in the world. And it enables us to really figure out and tap in. And the beautiful thing about it is anybody can do it.
It sounds just as accessible and relatable as the emotion code process. So in the body code, you point people to energy healing techniques, herbs. Is there anything related to Western medicine in it, or is it mostly alternative healing?
Let's see here. It's not like we have recommendations in there for antibiotics and things like that. It's pretty much all alternative and all natural remedies for things. Most of the time, my experience is that the vast majority of the time, people don't need pharmaceutical drugs. They don't need some kind of surgery. And that's what Western medicine has to offer. Western medicine is fantastic at acute care. If you've lost your elbow in some kind of accident and your leg's been taken off or something, we can reattach that. We can put on a new face. We can do a face transplant. They can put your hand back on if it's been separated from your body. That's all incredible stuff. For acute care, Western medicine is absolutely without peer in the world. But for chronic care, Western medicine just has no answers. I mean, and those are the kind of people that I saw day in and day out for many, many years. People that have been told there is no cure for you. All you can do is take these drugs for the rest of your life, and that's it. No one's ever going to be able to get you well.
Yeah, and chronic illness, chronic care is kind of a situation that will actually, what I've noticed in my experience, will actually push someone to try alternative or natural healing remedies because they've tried everything else. So they're kind of at their wits' end.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think that Western medicine, of course, is always going to have a place because of the acute care aspect of it. You're right. It's not the acute care patients that are seeking alternatives. They know they need Western medicine. They've had a car accident, they've got a broken bone or whatever. That's not the type of thing that we can work with. But we work with those people that have other things going on. And so many of the problems that people have are chronic. And look at all the pain centers, all the chronic pain centers in the U.S. And what happens? People go to those centers because they're in chronic pain, and all they do is give them different kinds of drugs. We do a webinar about every other week where we deal with people that are in chronic pain. And if you tune into our webinar, you can go to healerslibrary.com and find out when the next webinar is going to be. And you can tune in. And what you'll find is that I talk to people on these webinars. I work with people that are in chronic pain, for example, and I don't even like to talk to them unless they're at least a 7 on the 0 to 10 scale, and unless they've had the pain for at least a month or two. But I've worked with people on those calls, and usually within 5 or 10 minutes, we're able to take somebody that's a 7 or an 8 or a 9 on the pain scale, or even a 10, and we're able to get them down into, a 1, a 0, maybe a 2, within literally just a matter of minutes by finding the true underlying causes of their pain, and it's almost never what you think it is. Oftentimes there's some inherited component. It could be something from your childhood. I mean, you just never know. But the fascinating thing about the human body is that it manifests symptoms to us in an effort to get us to take care of the underlying problems. And we don't see it that way. We're so used to seeing symptoms as the problem. Symptoms are not the problem. If you've been diagnosed with cancer, for example, the cancer is not the problem. The problem is the underlying imbalances that have led to the creation of this symptom. Cancer is just a symptom. It's like any other symptom. If you're in physical pain, there are underlying reasons for that pain, and it's usually not what you think. There's usually emotional components to it and so on. So that's why I wrote the Emotion Code book first, was because 80% of all the imbalances that we have are really emotionally based. And what we find is that when you release that emotional baggage, things just start to get better. Pain goes away, often instantaneously. I mean, it's the most amazing thing. And that's why I have so much fun on these webinars, because, we have 1,000 people or more every time we do this that sign up, and we just pick people at random. It doesn't matter where they are on the planet. We find the imbalances and they feel better. And we do it routinely and have been doing it for years now.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned the importance of the relationship with the illness or the disease, because this just came up in another interview where, yeah, like you said, we look at disease or something as bad and we create this negative relationship with our body, and there's no blame. We didn't bring this disease down upon ourselves. We shouldn't be judged for like, oh, you have some limiting belief that's creating this. But just understand that it's part of the body's communication system with us. So I love that that's part of your process with the body code.
Well, that's exactly right. It's like if you're driving down the freeway and the check engine light comes on in your car and you pull off and you find a mechanic. If the mechanic comes back later and he says, well, we figured it out, your check engine light was on, we've disconnected it, you'd think, well, I don't think so. But see, that's how we take care of our bodies. You've got a migraine headache and you go to the doctor. The migraine headache is a check engine light. And so the doctor says, well, here, I can give you something that will turn off that check engine light for a while, but you're going to have to keep taking this because it's going to keep coming back on.
Yeah.
Right? And
that's a great analogy.
Yeah, that's how we take care of ourselves. The fascinating thing, though, is that our bodies are so complex that pain is just one kind of check engine light that our bodies manifest. And some of the other things that happen are these more elaborate diseases and the depression and the anxiety and the phobias and panic attacks and PTSD and the eating disorders. And all of those things are really just symptoms that are the body's way of turning on a check engine light and saying, hey, I'm going to make you feel depressed until you release these underlying imbalances that are going on. Or, hey, you're not going to be able to find your soulmate until you clear out this baggage from that relationship when you were 16. That's what it's like. And so we're working with the body on a completely different sort of level than what people are used to seeing, but it works.
To help the listener just understand a little bit more about how the body code or emotion code works, can you just take an example of someone you've worked with and just the symptom and your process of walking them through the steps, what you did to help alleviate it, and so that they can see it in process?
Well, sure. So I'll give you an example. There was a man I worked with many years ago, and his case illustrates some really powerful things about this. You see, when you're experiencing an intense emotion, that emotion will sometimes get trapped in the body. We call it a trapped emotion. And a trapped emotion is literally a ball of energy from about the size of a baseball to about the size of a cantaloupe. And that energy will get stuck in the body. And what it will do is it will cause a couple of different kinds of things to happen. First of all, since the human body itself is really nothing but an energy field, although it's a very complex energy field, when you have a trapped emotion that is in that energy field of the body, what that trapped emotional energy is going to do is it's going to distort the normal energy field of the body. It's going to distort that energy field. When it does that, what it does is it actually interferes with the flow of the energy in the meridians in the body. It interferes to some degree with blood flow and lymph flow. It interferes with all the chemical reactions taking place within that little sphere of energy, wherever that trapped emotion may reside. And these trapped emotions can land anywhere in the body, and they'll usually just stay right where they land. But there's another thing that goes on, and that is that you will tend to feel that emotion more easily. Whatever that emotion is, you'll tend to feel that specific emotion more easily than you otherwise would. Now, to give you an example, there was a man that came to me once who had really severe low back pain. It was about a 9 on the 0 to 10 scale. 10 is call 911, okay? So I started doing some testing with him. I had him hold out his arm. And we teach all of this in the emotion code. So he held out his arm parallel to the floor, and I started asking some questions. I asked, is there a trapped emotion that's contributing to your problem? And when I pressed down on his arm, it was very strong. That's a yes answer coming from the subconscious mind. So I got the emotion code chart. And by the way, you can go online, go to Google, and just type in emotion code chart, and you'll see thousands of these. So if you can imagine, I'm testing this guy, and I'm asking questions. Well, is this trapped emotion in column A in our chart? And the answer was yes. Now, the chart is divided up into 2 columns and 6 rows. And so we ask the body questions to identify where the emotion is. And so I asked, is this emotion in column A? And the answer came back very strong. His arm was strong. That was a yes answer. So then I divided, how we do it is we divide that column up into different rows. And we've got 6 rows. So the way we do it is we ask, okay, is this trapped emotion in one of the odd rows? And the answer came back, no, his arm was weak. So that means the emotion was in one of the even rows. So I asked, is it in row 2? No, row 4. And the answer came back, yes. Now in row 4, column A, there are 5 emotions. And so I asked, is the emotion anger? And the answer came back, yes, very strong. So then I asked, well, when did this occur? And doing this muscle testing, I was able to figure out that this had occurred about 20 years before. And he remembered what had happened. It was a relationship, I think, with a boss that he had that was really difficult, and he was angry a lot of the time. So I released the trapped emotion of anger from him. And to do that, what we do is you can use a magnet of any kind. You can use the magnet from your plumber that's on your fridge. You can use a Hello Kitty magnet. It doesn't matter, any kind of magnet. Or you can use your fingertips because they're also magnetic, or the palm of your hand. And what you do is you just swipe down the back a few times. There's a meridian that goes straight down the middle of the back called the governing meridian. And we use that meridian. It connects up to all the other little meridians, which are like little rivers of energy in the body. And I swiped down that meridian a few times to release that trapped emotion of anger. And his pain level went from a 9 to a 0. That fast. Boom, that fast. Amazing. And he was astounded and couldn't believe it. And it was kind of like a miracle for him. And I was really glad and thrilled that works so well. And oftentimes it does. So the interesting thing, though, about this guy is that he came back a couple of days later. And he said to me, he said, Dr. Nelson, he said, my back, since you released that trapped emotion, has been fine. I haven't had any pain at all. It's just, I can't figure this out. But he said, I have to talk to you about something else. He said, when I first came in here, I didn't really tell you, but I have had a problem with anger all my life. And as long as I can remember anyway, he said, I'm always on edge. I'm always yelling at my wife and my kids. I'm always kind of on the verge of being upset. And he said, I've tried anger management. It hasn't helped me. I just figured that's kind of who I was. But he said, since you released that trapped emotion of anger from me, I just feel relaxed. And I don't have to watch the road rage anymore. And I'm not yelling at my wife and my kids. And I just feel relaxed and peaceful. He said, how did you do that? How does that work? And at the time I said, I don't know. I have no idea. Because I really didn't. But here's what was going on with him. Think about this. He had literally had a ball of anger, this ball of pure emotional energy, and it lodged in his back. So all these years later, 20 years later, he's a 9 on the 0 to 10 scale of pain. We release the emotion of anger, and not only does his pain go away, but it changes how he feels. Why? Well, see, in all the situations of his life before that, when a situation would arise where he might tend to feel angry, he would tend to feel angry. He would slide right into that emotion much more easily, much more readily than he otherwise would have. Why? Because literally part of his body in this case, it was his low back, was actually feeling that emotion 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because an emotion is an energy, see? An emotion is a vibration. And in this case, it was anger. And so in a weird sense, it's like his low back was actually angry. It was feeling that emotion. Those tissues in that little, within that little sphere of energy were being bathed with that frequency all the time. So when a situation would come along where he might tend to feel angry, he would slide right into that resonance because part of him was already angry. And it sounds strange maybe, but this is really what we believe is going on with the body. And that's why when you release a trapped emotion, it can not only change how you feel physically, but it can totally change how you feel emotionally and mentally. And that's one of the beautiful things about this. I mean, we've seen people suicidally depressed get well literally within days of having their emotional baggage removed. I mean, I've seen people personally who had to decide every day if they were going to live or die that day, if they were going to take their life that day or live one more day. I've seen them get completely well just literally within days from having their baggage removed. And the beauty of it, you see, is that you don't have to rely on someone else. You can do this yourself. See, you can learn it yourself. You can do it yourself. It's really, really easy. If you want a practitioner to work with you, we've got lots of them all over. We have 3,000 certified practitioners roughly now in, I think, 63 countries around the world. So it's really growing.
Yeah. So what would you say to skeptics who don't believe that you can, using your fingers is going to release a trapped emotion from when you were 5?
Well, if you read the Emotion Code book, you'll understand the science behind all of this. And if you don't read it, then, you can continue to use drugs and use surgery to try to solve your problems. I mean, it's up to you.
Oh, all right. Well, there you have it.
There you have it. Hey, it's your decision.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. It's been very informative, and I didn't know that much about the body code, so I'm excited to learn more about that and the free resources that you listed. And before I let you go, I was wondering if it'd be okay if I asked you a few fun questions to get to know maybe a more personal side of you.
Absolutely. Fire away.
Okay. So what was your crowning achievement in grade school or middle school?
Oh, that's a really good question. What comes to mind was when I was in 7th grade, I created this huge paper mache village.
Oh.
I think it was like this Mongolian village, as I recall. I was pretty proud of that.
Wow, that sounds very elaborate.
It was, well, when I say huge, it was about, maybe half the size of your dining room table, I guess. But I was pretty proud of that.
What prompted you to create that?
I can't remember. I don't know. I've always had an interest in archaeology. My mother was really into archaeology, and she used to buy archaeology magazines. And I honestly think if I hadn't chosen this career, I'd either be teaching history someplace or I would be out digging somewhere.
Yeah. Well, you're kind of doing both, teaching past life history and digging on emotions. So you've got it covered. Okay. And the second question is, did you have a childhood hero growing up or a person you really admired?
Well, my father was really just an amazing, amazing man. And I used to travel with him when he was in real estate, and I would travel with him when he would drive out into the mountains to show properties and things. And those are my fondest memories of him. And I learned some great things from him. One of the things that he used to say is, he used to say, if we can't help each other out, we're not really good for very much. And he also had a saying, there's no limit to the amount of good that a person can do as long as they don't care who gets the credit. And when he died, there were people that came out of the woodwork from all over that none of us as his kids had ever even heard of, who told all kinds of stories about how he had saved their marriage and saved their home and how he loaned them money when they were really desperate and all kinds of amazing things.
Yeah, it sounds like he was a healer as well then.
He was, and my mom actually was a healer. She would have people call her all the time who would ask her for advice about what to do for different physical problems, and she always knew what to do. In fact, my 2 brothers and I, and my 2 sisters' husbands, At one point, we were all 5 of us in chiropractic school together. And we would all try to stump my mother. It never failed. We never could stump her. I can remember coming home saying, "Hey, Mom, guess what I learned about? Check this out." And she'd say, "Yeah, I know, but do you know about this?" And she always, it was amazing. I don't know. She read constantly and died at 86, but did crossword puzzles all of her life and was just incredibly sharp all the way to the end. And if it wasn't for her and for my father, there's no way I would be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, that's really special. And then lastly, what is the number one thing on your bucket list?
Oh, a big thing on my bucket list that I just achieved recently was I've always wanted to be a pilot. And when I turned 58 about a year ago, I decided I was starting to get kind of old. And if I didn't hurry up, I was going to get to be too late. So I got my pilot's license last year. And this year in February, I got my instrument rating. And so we have an airplane now for our company, and I'm the pilot. So.
Oh, well, congratulations. I always wanted to get my pilot's license when I was in high school and college. So yeah, that's great.
You have to really want it, especially the instrument rating. You have to really want that because it's, I think, probably the hardest thing I've ever done. But it really is so much fun. And one of the things on my bucket list is I'd like to take all my family and go to India, do some seminars, and I'd like to do some learn how to cook Indian food, maybe travel around a little bit, and go see where my father was stationed in World War II. He was in the Army Air Force and was stationed up in the far northeastern part of India. So that's one of the things I'd like to do. There are probably some other things on my bucket list, but that's the one that comes to mind.
Well, that's great. All right. Well, if listeners want to schedule training for the body code, what's the best way to find that?
Well, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the word out to the world because the world really needs healing. So we provide the emotion code for free. If you want to get it soft cover, go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, places like that. But if you want to get it for free, you can go to emotioncodegift.com and you get the book and the audio as free downloads. As far as certification, if you're looking for someone to help you that's a certified practitioner, we have a map of practitioners all over the world. You can find that at Healers Library, that's HEAL, healerslibrary.com. And more information about the body code is available at bodycodehealing.com.
For this week's WooWoo News Corner, I found Dr. Susan Heitler's blog on Psychology Today, posted February 29, 2012. It was my impression that Dr. Heitler came from very left-brained, skeptical beginnings, and the thing that convinced her most about the emotion code was her personal experience in trying the modality. I will post a link to her blog on the show's Facebook page so you can check it out for yourself. There are also numerous YouTube videos that show Dr. Nelson demonstrating the emotion code with clients. I encourage you to continue your own personal research on it to decide whether or not it resonates with you. Thank you for listening to WooWoo for the Skeptic. I would love to hear from you if you have ideas for a show or want to give feedback on an episode. And if you liked this topic on the emotion code, please share it with your friends. And if you didn't like focusing on feeling so much, you may have a fantastic career in IT engineering ahead of you. Believe me, I know. And now for your moment of woo. This quote comes from Helen Keller, who was the first deaf-blind person to graduate with a bachelor's degree. Her quote, "The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart." Have a great week, everyone.